Good day, you're watching Businessworld Live. I'm Danie, Laurel.
And I'm Jes Delos Santos. Here are today's top stories. As many institutions warn that the global economy is on the brink of recession, Finance Chief Diokno says the worst is over and the best is yet to come for the Philippines.
In a bid to meet international standards, the government plans to privatize the operations of the EDSA Carousel busway.
More than 2 million SIM cards have been registered by the country's telcos in the first 2 days of the mandatory listing.
And the trading year comes to a close. Which stocks performed the best this year and what is in store for the local bourse in 2023? Let's begin our broadcast with Finance Chief Diokno expressing optimism that the Philippines will register one of the highest growth rates in the region in 2023. That's despite threats of a global recession. Secretary Diokno says that because of the pandemic as well as Russia's invasion of the Ukraine and a slowdown in China, the global economy is likely to fall into mild recession next year. But he says that, quote, for the Philippines, the worst is over and better years are expected. For 2022, Diokno says the domestic economy may have grown faster than the government's full-year target of 6.5% to 7.5% off the back of a surge in all sectors such as manufacturing and construction. Now, as for 2023, while many institutions have downgraded their GDP forecast for the Philippines, the projected average of 6.5% is, quote, nothing to be sneezed at and remains one of the highest, if not the highest, growth rates among the ASEAN Plus 6 grouping. The 16-nation bloc includes the 10-member economies of the ASEAN plus China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and India.
The NTC reports that over 3.2 million SIM cards have already been registered as of Wednesday, December 28th. Under 1.7 million of these are under Globe. Registered smart SIM cards have hit 1 million. DITO has registered 530,000 so far. Meanwhile, the DICT is defending the use of selfies in SIM registration after some raised concerns over possible privacy violations. Undersecretary Ana Lamentillo told 1PH that selfie photos are necessary for validation and that the SIM Card Registration Act implies the need for this process.
Yung selfie verification, importante po yun. It's an additional protection to the Filipino consumers. Kasi marami po ngayon na tinatawag na spoofing. Ibig sabihin, they will claim your identity kahit na hindi po kayo yun.
Meanwhile, the government is eyeing to privatize the operations of the EDSA Carousel by next year to meet international standards.
Passengers will also have to say goodbye to free rides at the busway by 2023 due to budgetary constraints. Gerard de la Peña with the details.
The Transportation Department on Wednesday opened the Tramo station of the EDSA busway, making it the 4th station to become operational this year. So far, there are 21 EDSA busway stations from Monumento to Pitex in Parañaque. But Transportation Chief Jaime Bautista admitted that the facility is not up to par with global standards. That's why they are planning to privatize the busway by 2023.
Gusto natin, kung ipaprivatize natin to, talagang yung gagawin ng private sector will conform to international standards, no? Sigurado dapat yung mga pasahero natin hindi nababasa pag umuulan, hindi masyadong naiinitan kung mainit ang panahon, no? So, and siguro dapat maging komportable sila, no?
For now, commuters will have to brace themselves as free busway rides are set to end soon. Fares will be once again collected starting January 1 next year.
Walang naibigay na budget sa amin, no? Merong 1.2 billion, no, for contract service contracting, no. Pero napakaliit noon para ibigay natin dito sa EDSA busway, no. Kasi sa EDSA busway we spend around 10 to 12 million a day.
This is a burden for commuters, especially those who take the EDSA busway on a daily basis.
Ang hirap, tapos magkano na naman pamasahe, uwi ko pa, Cavite pa ako everyday.
Mabigat po. Sayang sayang din po yung pamasahe, pangkain na lang din yan eh.
Passenger volume at the EDSA busway reached up to 400,000 daily during the holiday rush. There were 750 buses, but this will have to be brought down to just 600 as passengers are expected to transfer to other modes of transport like the MRT. once the libreng sakay expires. Meanwhile, to augment the supply of public transport amid increasing demand, the LTFRB has reinstated and modified over 100 jeepney routes in Metro Manila. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, we are One News.
The government is looking to tighten travel protocols for tourists flying into the country from China. Transportation Secretary Jaime Bautista says the government is currently studying the possibility of requiring COVID-19 tests for Chinese tourists. This as Beijing continues to ease its COVID-19 restrictions despite the alarming spike in cases in China. Countries such as Japan, India, and Taiwan are all set to require negative COVID-19 tests from Chinese tourists flying in. Bautista says the government is considering a similar measure to ensure the safety of Filipinos.
Adopt protocols just like what the other countries are doing, no? Kasi syempre yung COVID is still there, no? And kailangan protektahan natin yung ating mga kababayan dito sa Pilipinas, no? So we should be cautious, we should be careful. Maski hindi naman, not necessarily RT-PCR, no? Antigen test, I think will be acceptable also, no? Basta sigurado tayo na pagpasok nila dito, walang COVID.
Let's pause for a quick break, but coming right up after that. We're down to the last trading day of the year. How did the bourse perform this 2022 and what's the outlook for next year?
We'll talk to a market analyst when Businessworld Live returns. Stay with us.
Marilu, a vendor, sets aside 10,000 pesos in budget to buy 10 kilograms of onions. But because of the high prices of onions, she is now considering selling other vegetables in the meantime.
Wala kaming order ngayon yan kasi sa sobrang mahal. Kahapon pa namin na sibuyas yan. Kasi pag mag-order kami ng ganon, magkano ang puhunan?
Vendors are now struggling to keep afloat as onions become more and more expensive. In Metro Manila, onions are selling for 460 to 600 pesos per kilo. Some small stores are even selling for as much as 750 pesos per kilo, making onions more expensive than beef at 420 pesos per kilo and pork at 370 pesos per kilo. For 1 kilo of onion, you can already buy 2 kilos of chicken for 400 pesos. Some consumers like Aling Baby prefer buying onions that are nearly rotten just to save up. These are being sold for 380 pesos per kilo at the Mega Q Mart.
Para nakamura ako kasi doon sobrang mahal. Kaya dito pagtiyagaan ko na lang.
Magkano daw yan?
300. So ang laki ng diferensya, di ba? Sobrang hirap. Budget talaga. Kasi, kita mo, 300 ito, bulok-bulok na, di ba? Wala, pagtyagaan na lang.
Despite skyrocketing prices, the Agriculture Department is still not keen on importing onions. The DA is hopeful though that onion prices will start to go down by 2023. For now, there are proposals to set the suggested retail price of red onions at 250 pesos a kilo. But until that gets approved, consumers have no choice but to bear the brunt and hold their tears back as they shop for pricier onions. For News 5, Camille Samonte, We Are One News.
This from the Philippine Star. The Philippine Dealing and Exchange Corporation, or PDEX, posted an all-time high for funds raised through bond listings at 508 billion pesos. The latest figure is 138% higher than the 213 billion pesos recorded last year as the country continues to recover from the pandemic. The banking sector accounted for more than a third of the amount raised this year as the industry continues to tap the domestic debt market to raise funds. PDEX says it is optimistic for a better 2023 after a robust bond listing this year.
The Securities and Exchange Commission greenlights the initial public offering of Optimum Quality Health Ventures, which also transacts under the name Camarin Doctors Hospital. The registration covers around 2.3 million shares of the hospital and is subject to the company's compliance with remaining requirements. The company will offer 2,500 blocks composed of 100 shares each. Each block will be priced from 200,000 pesos to 400,000 pesos. The hospital expects to net over 840 million pesos from this offer. Shares will be traded over the counter through the hospital's internal staff, as medical practitioners and their relatives are considered to be the IPO's intended market.
PLDT says it will not engage with U.S. law firms that have recently expressed interest in probing the company for possible violations of federal securities laws. PLDT says it has, quote, retained U.S. counsel to defend the company against any suits that may be filed by these law firms on behalf of investors. U.S. law offices that are eyeing to look into PLDT include McInerney, Robbins Geller Rodman and Dowd, Glancy Pronge, and Howard G. Smith. This follows PLDT's announcement of a 48 billion peso budget overrun, representing 12.7% of its capex over the past 4 years.
Now, for many people, 2022 was a year to write off, and market participants may feel the same way.
But just before we say goodbye to one of the most tumultuous years in equities history, let's take a look back with Tina Ulang, Head of Research at First Metro Investment Corp. Tina, good day. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Hi.
Happy holidays,
Hi.
Tina.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Jester and Danie.
Okay, Tina,
Happy
what
New Year.
a year 2022 has been. What a year. Give us, a 2-minute description of what 2022 was like for local equities. Was there any bright spots here? Any way that people actually made money? Give us a feeler as we take a look back and try to forget a lot of things that went on.
I would describe it as a flattish year. We were down from the beginning of the year to date. We were down 7%, a little more than 7% negative. But still, it's a profitable year for people who are closely tracking the market and the price formation of the main market index, the PSA. If you're going to be looking back in June, we had a rally. It was a 13% rise from 6,000 level to 6,680. So that was a 13% rise. And then we had another rally coming from the very low level of 5,700. It was an 18% rally, 5,700. And then we shot up to a high of like 6,780 last November. And November was the best month, 10, and we saw foreign buying. So if you are into the market and really into it, you would be able to spot the troughs and benefit from the rallies from the troughs. So this is a very friendly market to traders.
Interesting.
But for the long term, of course, for the long-term investor, sit back and relax, and you will be gaining over the years.
Sana pumasok tayo dito.
Sana nung palang mga bandang October. But given that as well, what for you were the best performing sectors, at the same time the worst performing naman on the opposite end?
Of course, the bank.
Okay.
The banks is the major inflation hedge because as the interest rates rise, and of course that follows your inflation, there is this spread. There is this gap between the yield that the bank makes on the asset and the funding cost. And so that spread has widened, and it was just in time when the loan cycle was on the up cycle, rising. And so there's this very good income spread coming from the loan cycle, which is reflected in the net interest income, and of course other sources of income, your FX trading also. The peso was weak. Some banks, of course, made money also, and then you have your trust business. So it's the banks, and then the property also benefited because of the I'm talking about the earnings performance. But in terms of the price performance, the reopening story of the Philippines benefited the malls, benefited the property, the BPO. And so Ayala Land was very high, and then SM Prime also recovered. The income also improved because of the base effect, because we were on lockdown in 2021, much of the year, half year, and that created a base effect. So the worst performer for the year would be those that are heavily into FX debt, FX, those that have very huge FX debts.
Okay, ma'am, let's look at this chart here, no? You've got Semirara, really like off the charts. Tell us more about that, the energy space, the mining space. What was that related to, what went on in, of course, you have the Russia-Ukraine war, we have a looming energy crisis, we have a reopening of the economy. What were those sectors like, and why this major jump in the stock price of the likes of Semirara and these mining companies?
Of course, the global commodity prices were very high, and that was triggered by the Ukraine war, and then oil prices went up. Of course, coal prices is going to follow the petroleum global prices. And Semirara, as we know, is one of the biggest exporter of coal, also a domestic supplier of coal. And so they benefited from the very high prices of coal, and also they had this power supply. And we are in need of more power supply, and so Aboitiz Power, which is on an expansive mode both in renewable and also in the traditional coal-powered plants, also benefited. The spot prices at the WESM is very strong, and we are really a very good reopening story with much pent-up demand in services, in power, in consumer, and so this all got reflected in the price performance of these leaders in the PSA.
Okay, at the same time, if we take a look at this chart as well, one of the worst performers, you have PLDT down 27.5. No small thanks, of course, to that whole saga with that budget overrun here. Is the selling done at this stage, and would you still pick up the stock as they try to cut back on some of their expenditures and projects and vendors as well?
I didn't mention PLDT, but of course PLDT is a high dividend paying stock. It should be in your portfolio because those clients that people, investors who would want a steady stream of dividends in their portfolio would benefit from PLDT. So PLDT should be there in your stock. So whatever is happening now, whatever are the issues now, you can benefit actually from the technical bounce. We've seen a technical bounce from 1,190. It's now up. And so it's very cheap. It's actually the cheapest among the telcos, and this is an opportunity to buy, gain from the capital appreciation potential once this issue is resolved.
Okay.
And the fundamentals are still very intact. It's one of the largest provider of services in the country. We are in the digitization, and so PLDT is right at the center of all of this digitization, emerging digital economy.
Okay, ma'am, you mentioned earlier on the earnings. So you mentioned the banks, you mentioned properties with the reopening story. Next year, year with all of the headwinds that we are facing, inflation possibly biting into consumers' pockets, will we be seeing the same kind of earnings growth that we saw this year?
Oh, we have an economic and capital markets briefing January 11. Please attend.
We
But
will,
I'll
ma'am.
answer a
We'll wait for
little.
that.
I'll answer a little because I cannot reveal everything
Ay,
here.
hindi pa ba? Wala pang target. Nako.
A bit of a teaser for today at least.
Teaser.
Yeah.
Better
So please
or
attend
worse?
our
Yun lang siguro.
As taking off from what the finance secretary said, the growth outlook is the momentum is rolling on. We are one of the top performer in terms of the GDP growth. Vietnam is 6.5, we might be 6. India is about 7% next year, we might be a little above 6, coming off from above 7% this year. So the economy is rolling on, and this gives me hope that corporate earnings is also gonna be continuing on the growth path. Now, the qualification there is that it's going to be on a somewhat decelerating path because we
Okay.
cannot beat the growth that we have achieved this year, which is about 7%. But the indications from past corporate earnings, 9 months, we saw 25% 9-month growth of corporate earnings of the PISA year on year. That's very encouraging because that's going to be a good start, a good base onwards, given the continuing growth of the economy. And the third thing is that we have this policy space. We still have the monetary policy space to provide some stimulus to the economy if and when the global headwinds, the recession fears prove to be tougher than expected.
Okay, ma'am, you mentioned also the peso saga, no? What's that going to be doing? I know you can't reveal na naman there's a Jan 11 outlook, pero is there, an
Peso,
indication that the peso will be strengthening at least enough for foreign investors to be buying back in?
Well, it's easy to see that we are a growing economy, and based on the BSP forecast of our external deficits, we have this current account deficit, trade deficit, and our overall BOP deficit. We are going to be at the very record high. So this is new territory as far as our external deficit. And what that do to the peso is that you have some pressure for depreciation because your requirements is going to be bigger. But the mitigating factor would be the extent the BSP is able to counteract that by raising the interest rate. As we've seen in the past, the BSP has been very vocal that it's going to be very tough on inflation, and it's going to be like looking out for what the Fed is gonna do onwards in the first quarter of the year, and therefore that's gonna mitigate whatever is pressure, downward pressure is going to be there on the currency. Downward meaning depreciation pressure on the currency. So we have this tug of war between the fundamental, our external deficit, very big, but we have the central bank having the policy space to defend the currency. And of course, the gross international reserve. We continue to earn from our OFW remittances, 3% growth. And that is projected to be growing still. Our BPO continue to be our competitive edge. Still growing, 5% expected, 3% for next year. So we have this tug of war, and only time can tell what's going to happen next. I just hope that the global commodity prices eases somewhat. They were actually lower now because if global commodity prices are lower, like your oil and coal, then your import cost is going to be lower, and that's going to be less of a burden for the currency.
Now, despite all of those headwinds, inflation, recession, China reopening story here, are there
Headwind ba yun?
are there any names here that investors should be picking up for next year?
Your stock picks, ma'am. Stock picks for
Stock
next year.
picks. I cannot reveal all again.
Sige.
Go ahead.
Only two favorites.
Go.
I'll go.
Only two favorites. One I can recall, which I think I mentioned in already. I don't know if it's here. It's DNL. Yeah, that's
DNL.
one of my
Okay.
stock picks. DNL. They have this expansion program, and they're trying to benefit from this new capacity. It's gonna kick in, and it's going to be one of their biggest export earning portfolio in their overall business setup. So this is I think a big game changer for them. They're going to be a bigger global player, and we'll see what's gonna happen. So it's exciting. That's one of my chosen stock. Of course, there's so many others. So please attend our
Sige. O,
January
DNL na
11.
yung bibilhin
DNL.
nila today. Okay, ma'am, before we let you go, no, we have a bet here on how the index is going to be performing. We've seen that the rest of Asia has opened in the red because of some fears of China reopening pala, bringing in COVID-19 again. You know, so I'm looking at 65.50.
I'm at 65.80.
65.80, but will there be some window dressing by 3 p.m. this afternoon? And what was your prediction for the year end, and what is your prediction now?
Jester would be the more optimistic based on your point.
I'm realistic.
Danie would be how will I call Danie? Realistic.
Base case.
I think I would be there in between 65-75.
Oh, sige. So may upside fan.
Na konti,
All right. So a little bit more there, but like you mentioned, it was a year of trading sideways with some upside potential here. You mentioned one specific stock, but also just the general recovery story, and looking very closely at those commodity prices and what's going to be happening to the peso next year with the foreign investors. Thank you so much, Tina Ulang, Head of Research.
Don't forget.
Yes.
January 11.
January 11. What time is that, ma'am, and how can our viewers watch that?
3 p.m.
All right.
Okay, 3 p.m. on your Facebook or YouTube pages of First Metro Investment.
We'll send the invitation.
All right.
By invitation. All right, so watch out for that. Thank you so much, Tina Ulang of First Metro Investment Corporation. Thank you.
Happy
Thank
New
you.
Year.
Happy New
Year.
Jester. Bye.
And that's it for today, December 29, 2022. Join us again tomorrow at exactly 9:30 a.m. You can also catch us on Signal Play. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Jes Delos Santos.
And I'm Danie Laurel. Stay safe, Philippines. We are One News, all sides, all the time.